In Lecture 10, we're going to talk about creating art, which is a big deal in art philosophy. It's all about the relationship between the artist and their artwork, kind of like what we talked about in the fourth lecture. We usually think of the artwork as something the artist made, the result of their hard work. But then we start focusing on the artists themselves, their thoughts, the techniques they use, and their personal style. It's like everything circles back to the artist. The tricky part is when we start to only see the artwork as something that represents the artist, like a kid represents his parent. This can lead to some misunderstandings, especially when teachers go from analyzing the work to analyzing the artist, as if the artwork is just the artist's personal diary. An artist's work becomes like their life story, but that doesn't mean our connection to the artwork is the same as our connection to the artist. It's cool to discuss how different artists create their work, but we can't forget that talking about an artist's work isn't the same as talking about the artist themselves. So, the subject of our 10th lecture is all about the real deal between the artwork and the artist. It's a big deal, you know. We gotta clear up this misunderstanding, like I've said before. The artist's take on their work doesn't carry any weight. Once the artist creates the artwork, if it's the real deal, it takes on a life of its own. When the artist looks at their creation, they're just like any other viewer. The meaning of the artwork doesn't come from the artist's explanation, and that's a key point. I figured out why I failed at my dream of being a poet when I was a kid. It was because the poems I wrote weren't the real deal. I showed them to my friends, and they didn't get it. So, I had to explain, what do these lines mean, and what do those lines mean? After I explained it all, they found the poem pretty interesting, and that's when I knew I had failed. You get me? If the poem can't stand on its own without my explanation, is it even a poem? If we were to ask Mao Zedong about his poem, what exactly were you trying to say? People would have different interpretation of his poems. Take the case of Zhang Kejia, died 2004, who had famously reported Mao's thought on the subject, poetry has no fixed interpretation. I myself cannot fully explain it. That sums it up. Chairman Mao also said, poetry is written by the people, we are just the spokesperson for the people. Upon careful consideration, this statement is profound. We say that poetry is written by poets, but this poet says that poetry is written by the people, and we are just the spokesperson for the people. Artists always seem to have this air of mystery about them, don't they? Their appearance can be quite different from the norm, especially with their long, flowing locks. It's almost like a stereotype that a male artist should have long hair to show that he's an artist. They often have this unkempt look, but hey, maybe that's just who they are or the image they want to project. Let's not dwell on that too much, it's not really the main point here. Speaking of the mystery of artists, I can't help but feel a bit bummed that Fudan University doesn't have a proper art department. I mean, where are all the folks with long hair wandering around campus? It's definitely a bummer that our university is missing out on that, right? We need to mix it up a bit and have the chance to hang out with these kinds of people, instead of diving straight into academic logic theory and symbolic operations all the time. We need someone to say some wild and wacky stuff, like Jia Baoyu. I mean, come on, saying things like all men in the world are scum and filth, and all women in the world are as refreshing as water, that's some deep stuff, right? But when you put it in fancy language, it just sounds plain silly. Imagine saying, all the guys here, including me, are scum and foam, you know. Back in the day, Chinese society was totally dominated by men, right? When Jia Baoyu said that all men are what? What was he getting at, saying they're made of mud, dross, and froth, with a foul odor that's overpowering? It was a pretty stifling time in society, huh? Artists just have a different way of talking compared to regular folks, that's what they're getting at. Man, I really wish Fudan had that kind of laid-back vibe on campus, with people strolling around with long hair like an ancient knight. I mean, most of the top universities in the world have art departments. Fudan's definitely got some flaws. I mean, sure, we've got a medical school, but it wouldn't hurt to have an art school or department too. Good medical schools are important, but we need some love for the arts as well. So, let's keep talking about how artists and regular folks are connected. We can totally split people into two groups, right? There are the artists and then there's the rest of us. Artists are always in the minority, and the rest of us make up the majority, so we call ourselves ordinary, right? But even though we're pointing out this difference, let's not forget that deep down, we're all the same. Why do I say that? Well, for one, everyone has a craving for art. What does that mean? It's not just about enjoying and accepting art, but also about creating it. What's this craving all about? It's about expressing our deepest emotions by reimagining real things, and everyone has that urge. I think that's a pretty spot-on way to put it, right? It's about expressing our deepest emotions by reimagining real things. There are basically two ways to express our deepest emotions, right? One is to just let it all out, like, I'm mad, I'm yelling. I'm super sad, I'm bawling. These are all ways to express emotions, but it's not really art. Otherwise, if I just yell, it means I've created a work of art. Then there's another way to express and hold onto our deepest emotions, and that's through what? Imaginative reconstruction. It's a need that everyone has, and sometimes it just comes out without us even realizing it. For example, we're not professional singers, but when we're in a certain mood, we can't help but hum a tune or sing a song, because that song happens to express our current feelings, and we sing it with all our heart. That's already a work of art. It's already a work of art. Maybe the singing isn't that great, or maybe it's amazing. So, we've got this thing called karaoke, right? Most of us aren't exactly professional singers, are we? So, what's the deal with karaoke? It's like we're getting our kicks by making others suffer. If you're just doing it for your own enjoyment, then go ahead and sing solo, but no, you've got to drag your friends into listening to something they can't stand. But hey, you're really getting into the creative process, aren't you? You want to express your feelings about this song with your own voice, right? And if you put in the effort and keep at it, you could actually become a singer. It's possible. This just goes to show that we all have what? A need for art. You know, you were in love, and you never really thought about writing poetry, but somehow you ended up doing it. You didn't have any plans to become a poet, but there you were, writing that love poem. I've still got a few of those stashed away, written back when I was young, and now I cringe at the thought of digging them out and giving them a read. I've dabbled in artistic creation too, and I bet you and everyone else have as well, but there's a real issue in this day and age. Our communication is so easy, our tech is so advanced, we just fire off text messages. But let's be real, a text message is not a love poem. Miss me? Yeah. That's it. Our chances to create something meaningful are dwindling, right? The ease of our communication tech is starting to do what to our emotions? Flatten them. Those deep, intense feelings have vanished, that excitement of receiving love letters. And then we'd eagerly tear open those love letters. Back in the day, it was pretty fascinating. I was boarding at Fudan University for my undergrad, and we took turns in our class to check the mailbox each day, and the rest of us would be waiting anxiously, you know? Around 4:30 in the afternoon, the designated mailbox checker would return with a big stack of letters, and we'd all gather around to see if there was a letter for us. Every time, I'd feel so let down, wondering why there wasn't a letter for me. That's what it was like, waiting for a love letter. Pretty amusing, right? So those love letters were all written like really good prose, and oh, I still have them tucked away. I can't believe how I had such a vivid imagination back then. Such intense emotions. It all feels so distant now. But hey, it was all part of our creative journey. You know, at the end of the day, we're not all that different from artists. And the thing is, each and every one of us has the potential to become a real craftsman. See, the thing about artists is that they're basically craftsmen at heart, with a knack for creating in a particular area that speaks to their senses. The way I see it, we're all in the same boat. We've all got talent, it's just that sometimes we don't get the chance to figure out where our talents lie. It's all down to the environment we grow up in and the opportunities that come our way. Some folks are great at visual arts, others have a real ear for music, and then there are those who were born to dance. Everyone's got their thing, you know? Some people are just natural storytellers, always cracking jokes and making everyone laugh. Take Joe Lebo, for example. He didn't learn that stuff in school, he was just shooting the breeze in the neighborhood, and everyone couldn't help but crack up at his jokes and imitations. Ever heard of De Zhuang Moz? It's a hit with the locals in Shanghai. And those street vendors, always offering you a smoke. The way they walk and talk, it's like they're putting on a show. Joe Lebo's stand-up comedy is a riot for us Shanghainese. So, what does all this mean? It means that each and every one of us has our own unique talent. We've all got something special, we just haven't had the chance to really develop it. But mark my words, we're all destined to become craftsmen in our own right. Because of this, we're basically just like artists. But, I mean, an artist isn't just stuck at the level of a craftsman. What do they have to be at first? A real painter, who, when they see works that are made by craftsmen, can appreciate them, you know. Wow! This brushwork is amazing, this technique is so skillful, this is another painting evaluated from the perspective of a craftsman. But you know what this painting is missing? It's missing something that I can't quite explain, right? That's because in the end, it's not really art, it's a craft. But all artists have that craftsman side to them. They can recognize the works of successful craftsmen because they themselves are accomplished craftsmen. So, in the beginning, we're all going to become experts in a certain area. And at that point, we're really not that different from artists. First off, what do we all have in common? The need for art. And secondly, everyone has their own natural abilities when it comes to craftsmanship. It's never too late, right? Let's say I'm 60 years old. In a few years when I retire, I can choose to develop my skills in a field where I know I have a bit of talent and sensitivity. It's possible, as long as you keep at it. But if I hope to turn into an artist, that's a whole different story. So, let's start by saying there's no fundamental difference, and then we talk about where the differences later arise. Alright, we all know there's no fundamental difference. First off, we all have this need for art. It's the desire to do something, to creatively reimagine real things in order to express and process our emotions. We've all written a poem, maybe hummed a tune, or perhaps we've dabbled in painting. Everyone has this need, and then, because we haven't become artists, we channel this artistic need into the realm of appreciating art, right? As art enthusiasts and admirers, we satisfy our artistic needs. So, the second thing is what I just mentioned, each of us definitely has our own natural talents in a specific sensory field.